All right, so in this video lecture, we're going to look at one half of a model of a market. We talked about how we have different economic systems, different ways in which societies answer those questions of what and how and for whom to make. And since we live in a market-based economy, we're going to build a model of a market so we can understand how things look, at the micro level, and then from there we'll graduate back up to the macro level. So a market, simply speaking, is any institution that brings buyers and sellers together. So this could be a physical marketplace, such as a grocery store or a farmer's market, or it could be a virtual marketplace, so something like eBay or Amazon. So anything that brings buyers and sellers together we would consider a marketplace, whether it's a physical or a virtual space. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at both sides of the market. We're going to start with the buying side. And so we're going to look at demand. So we're going to see what determines demand for goods and services. So to start this, we're going to do a little thought exercise. And so, if you're playing along at home, choose a number between 1 and 10, okay? And we're going to imagine that I am selling A's on my quizzes, right? And you guys are willing to buy an A on a quiz. I'm going to assume that you all want an A on a quiz. So the trick is that that number you just picked represents the number of dollars that you have in your pocket that you can spend on an A. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to throw out different prices, and I'm going to pretend like I have a room full of people in front of me, and we're going to see how many people would be willing and able to pay various prices. Okay, and I'm going to keep track on a little chart here, and then I'll scan and post this in later. So basically what I'm going to do is, hopefully you can see that, I'm going to show different prices, and then at each price I'm going to count how many people theoretically would be willing to pay that price. So again, pick a number between 1 and 10, and you can play along at home. So let's imagine that in a room full of 30 people, I offer to sell A's for $10. Right? Now that's a pretty high price, and that's the highest number that you guys could have chosen. So I would imagine that there's very few people that will have chosen the number 10 and who thus would be able and willing to pay $10. So maybe I've got, just 3 people, we'll say. All right. So I see, oh, well, that price was too high, so maybe I'll offer to sell A's at a lower price. So maybe I drop the price down to 8. So let's say that at $8, those same 3 people that could afford 10, they'll still be able to afford $8, and now they'll save a couple of bucks. But let's say that a larger number of people, some additional people that couldn't afford 10 but could afford 8, are now in the market for A's. So let's say that that number jumps up to 10 people. And I'm going to continue in this fashion. I'm going to keep offering different prices until I find the absolute lowest price where everybody is willing to pay. So I drop the price from $8 to $6, and let's say that the number of buyers jumps up to 16. And then if I drop the price even lower to $4, maybe it goes up to 21 buyers. And then finally, I drop the price down to $2, and maybe some of you only chose one. You only have $1. So even if I'm willing to sell an A for $2, if you only have $1 in your pocket, you still can't even afford $2. So let's say we get not quite everybody, and we sell 29 A's at $2. All right. So we're going to have a little chart that looks like this. Okay, so you see the various prices from 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2, and then in the other column I've got the quantity of A's that I will expect to sell, that the buyers are going to be willing to buy at those various prices. And so what we've done here is we have created what we call a demand schedule. So when you think of a schedule, you think of like a bus or train schedule or a schedule of TV programming. We've got a table here that shows different combinations of price and quantity demanded. All right, so each of those individual numbers, the 3, the 10, the 16, 21, or 29, each of those individual numbers is a quantity demanded, and we're going to have a unique quantity demanded at every price. And so if we define demand based on this little exercise, we would say that demand is a schedule like we created or a curve. We're going to plot this graphically in a second. But demand is a curve or a schedule that shows us how much of a good or service consumers will purchase at various prices within a period of time. And then comma, we're going to add to that the phrase ceteris paribus. So we're assuming that everything else that might affect a consumer's willingness to pay, we're going to assume nothing else is changing. Everything else is held constant, and we're describing just the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity demanded. All right. So again, we're just showing how much will how much will consumers buy at various prices at any given point in time. And so what we can then do is we can sketch out a graph. And so I'm going to plot this, and I'm going to scan and post this. So we're going to draw a two-dimensional graph, and on the x-axis we're going to track the quantity of the A's that I'm selling, and on the vertical axis we'll track the price. And so I'm going to write in those various prices, so 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. And then you can see that in my chart. At each of those prices, I'm going to go over and I'm going to track how many A's I'm selling at each price. So at $10, I only sell, a couple of A's. I only sold 3. So I want to plot that point. If I drop it down to 8, it jumped up to 10. If I drop it down to 6, I get even more A's sold, so 16. If I drop it down to 4, I'm going to sell 21 A's. And then finally, if I drop it all the way down to 2, almost everybody, 29 people. All right. And so, if you can see that, I've plotted all of those combinations of price and quantity demanded. And then I'm just going to connect the dots. And if I connect all of those dots, what I'm going to see is that I've got my demand curve. And so this demand curve is telling us the exact same thing that the demand schedule is telling us. It's showing us the relationship between the price and the quantity demanded at each price. And so what we see when we look at our demand schedule is that we have a clear relationship between price and quantity demanded, and in fact it is an inverse relationship. And so this relationship is captured in our law of demand, which simply says that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. So if I'm the seller and I'm wondering, how many A's am I going to sell, I can just look at my schedule or my curve and I think, okay, well, maybe I start out at $8, and I know that if I sell at $8, 10 of you will buy the A's. Right? And I can look at my curve, and again, I'm going to scan this so you can see it more clearly, but at $8, I go over to my demand curve, and I come down, and I see, oh, okay, so at $8, again, I'm going to sell 10 A's. Now, if I lower the price from $8 down to $4, right, I would just go down a couple rows in my schedule, and I see, okay, at $4, I'll sell 21 A's. And in my demand curve, I could do the same thing. I come over here to $4, and I go over to where $4 intersects my demand curve at this point, and I see, okay, yeah, I'm going to sell 21 A's. So when we change the price, what's going to happen is that we're going to just move from one row to another in our demand schedule. So we would find whatever price and go over and see the quantity. And then graphically, we would simply move from one point to another along the demand curve. Okay? Now, in our definition of demand, we noted that it's the relationship between price and quantity demanded, ceteris paribus, right? Assuming that everything else is constant, nothing else is changing. But now we want to ask, well, what else might affect whether consumers are willing to pay a price? Okay, so that number that you picked, let's say that we double it, right? So now let's imagine that you have twice as much money in your pocket. This would be analogous to saying that maybe you get a pay raise, right? So you're earning more income. Well, if everybody has more income and we went through the same experiment, what we're going to see is that at each of those prices, I would probably have more people that were willing to pay each price. So maybe at $10 now, instead of only selling 3 A's, if everybody has more money, maybe I'm going to sell 6 or 7. And at $8, instead of selling 10 A's, maybe I'll sell 14 or 15. And so what we see is at every price, we would get an increase in the quantity demanded. Alternatively, if we decrease your income, let's say you take your original number, we cut it in half, then at every price, I would expect there to be a lower quantity demanded. And so what's going to happen then is I'm going to draw this out, and again, this will be scanned, is if we see quantity demanded increase at every price, and we replot that graph, what we're going to get is a shift to the right of the demand curve. We would say that overall demand increased. The quantity demanded at each individual price is now higher. All right, so this represents an increase in demand. Alternatively, if we saw a decrease in income, we would see that at every price, the quantity demanded would decrease. And so if we were to redo the experiment and replot all of those points, we would see that the demand curve would shift to the left. Demand would decrease. Okay? And again, we're asking, what happens if income changes? And so it's a little tricky because it turns out that when we talk about how income affects demand, there's actually two different types of goods we need to consider. For most goods and services, we classify them as a normal good. And this simply means that when our income rises, our demand rises as well. And alternatively, if our demand goes down, or excuse me, if our income goes down, we demand less of that good or service. Now, there's another type of good, though, where it actually works in the opposite direction. And this is what we call an inferior good. So, for example, if your income goes up, maybe your demand for ramen noodles goes down. Or if the opposite happens, if you get a pay cut at work or you lose your job and your income goes down, maybe suddenly you're going to go back to buying ramen noodles. Okay? So with a normal good, income and demand move in the same direction, and with an inferior good, income and demand are going to move in opposite directions. So income is what we call a determinant of demand. It is something, one of those ceteris paribus other factors that is clearly going to have an impact on what consumers are going to be willing to pay for a good or service. So that's the first of 5. There's some other things. There's some other determinants, though. The price of related goods. And again, like with income, there's actually 2 types of related goods that we need to consider. The first type is what we call complements. So these are goods, different goods, distinct goods that we purchase good. We've purchased this good, we purchased that good, and then we actually consume them at the same time. Right? They complement each other. They go together. So an example would be peanut butter and jelly. Right? You typically buy a jar of peanut butter and you buy a jar of jelly at the same time, and then of course you buy bread. Right? So that's a third complement, and you consume a peanut butter jelly sandwich. But then we might ask, well, what would happen to the demand for peanut butter if the price of jelly changes, right? So let's imagine that the price of jelly goes down. So we've got a demand for jelly, and we've got a separate demand for peanut butter. Well, if the price of jelly goes up, that our law of demand tells us that the quantity demanded of jelly will go down, right? So if jelly gets more expensive, you'll buy fewer jars of jelly. Well, what's going to happen in the demand for peanut butter? Well, if you're buying fewer jars of jelly because jelly got more expensive, then you're probably going to buy fewer jars of peanut butter as well. And it doesn't matter what the current price of peanut butter is, right? The price of peanut butter may be really high, may be really low. All we're saying is that if the price of peanut butter's complement, the jelly, goes up, your overall demand for peanut butter will go down. So that demand curve will shift to the left. Alternatively, if jelly gets cheaper, if the price of jelly goes down, you're going to buy a greater quantity of jelly. And if you're buying more jelly, you're going to need to buy more peanut butter. And so demand for peanut butter will go right back up. And so that's an example of 2 related goods that are complements, things that go together. Now the other type of related good is what we call substitutes. And whereas complements are goods that you consume together, substitutes are going to be pairs of goods that you consume one or the other. You do not consume them at the same time. So a great example would be Coke and Pepsi. Right? Typically, you don't buy a Coke and a Pepsi and consume, a mixture of Coke and Pepsi. You buy one or the other. Well, let's think about what would happen to our demand for Coca-Cola if the price of Pepsi changes, right? So if the price of Pepsi goes up, again, law of demand says that if the price of a good goes up, the quantity demanded will go down. So if the price of Pepsi goes up, people are going to buy less Pepsi. Well, if you're buying less Pepsi and you still want to drink a soda, then that probably means that you're going to switch to buying Coca-Cola instead. And so if the price of Pepsi goes up, then you're going to buy more of the substitute. So demand for Coca-Cola would go up. Alternatively, if the price of Pepsi goes down, if Pepsi gets cheaper, well, your quantity demanded of Pepsi will go up, which means you're going to stop buying Coca-Cola. So your demand for Coca-Cola goes down. So the demand curve for Coca-Cola would shift to the left. So that's our second determinant of demand. We've got income, and we've got to look at normal versus inferior goods, and then we've got prices of related goods, both complements and substitutes. Now, a few other determinants. The first is the number of buyers. So if we went through the same experiment and we created our demand schedule with twice as many buyers, then we would expect that at every price we would sell a higher quantity of A's. So that means at every price we'd sell more A's, and so our demand curve would shift to the right. Demand would increase. Alternatively, if we did the same experiment with half the number of people, if we decrease the number of buyers, then we would see that at every price we're going to sell fewer A's. The quantity demanded would be lower at every price, and so we'd get a decrease in the demand curve. The demand curve would shift to the left. So number of buyers is another determinant. Fourth determinant is taste and preferences, right? You're not going to buy something, you're not going to be willing to pay for something unless you have some need for it or some desire for it, if you like something or not. So when we see people develop a greater taste or preference for a good or service, we would see demand for that good or service increase. Alternatively, if suddenly people like something less, right? Maybe it goes out of style, or they learn, maybe people realize, oh, soda's not healthy, right? Well, people like being healthy, so they don't like to consume unhealthy goods and services. So maybe demand for, sugary soda pop goes down because people have a preference for, healthier things instead. So, tastes and preferences. Do people like it or not? If they like it, they'll demand more of it. If they don't, they'll demand less of it. And then the final determinant of demand gets at that one part of the definition of demand within a period of time. So whenever we're looking at demand, we're thinking about what is the demand for the product today. Well, when you buy something today, you are probably going to be taking into consideration, things that you think will happen in the future. So, for example, let's say that you are trying to figure out how many, tacos and beers to buy tonight. You're getting off work, you're going to go out, happy hour, and let's say that before work is over, your boss calls you and says, "Hey, I'm going to give you a raise on Monday." Right? You're still going to earn the same pay today on Friday, but you know that in a few days you're going to start earning more. And so what you might do is you might say, "Hey, I'm going to celebrate, and I'm going to go out, and my demand for beer and tacos is going to go up today because I expect to earn more money in the future." Alternatively, what if your boss calls you in and says, "Hey, times are tight, I've got to cut your pay starting on Monday." Well, you're still getting paid the same amount today, the same income today, but you expect your income to go down in the future, which means your demand for beer and tacos today may go down. All right, you're going to think, okay, I'm going to have to start saving my money, so I've got to start cutting back on, fun stuff. What about the price of a good or service? What if you expect the price to go up in the future or the price to go down? A great example is gasoline, right? You buy gasoline, on a couple times a week, maybe once or twice a week. Well, what happens if you start to notice that the price of gasoline is going down? Well, if you see it going down and you think that it's going to continue to go down in the future, well, your demand on any given day for gasoline may go down. You may think, okay, I think gas is going to be cheaper tomorrow, so I'm going to reduce how much gas I buy today. Maybe I'll buy just enough to get me, through tomorrow or next week. So your demand for gasoline goes down today, but then your demand for gasoline in the future will be higher. Alternatively, if you think that the price of gasoline is going to be going up in the future, you are going to go out and try to buy as much gasoline as you can today to avoid paying the higher price. So your demand goes up today in anticipation of the higher price. Other examples, because again, it's not just how much money we're earning, not just the future price, but what about weather, right? What if we think that this summer it's going to be really rainy, right? The weatherman says we're going to get a lot of rain this summer. Well, we would expect the demand for umbrellas to go up because people are expecting, that they're going to need this umbrella in the future. Alternatively, what if the weatherman says, "Hey, it's going to be really cold this summer, right? It's going to be raining and cold, and it's not good summer weather." Well, then if we look at something like the demand for bathing suits, we would expect demand for bathing suits to go down because people expect it to not be good, not to be good summer weather. Okay, so demand overall tells us about the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity demanded at that price. And we look at all these various prices and all these various quantities demanded, and we put them together, and that entire curve, that entire schedule is demand. If we see a change in price, we simply move along our demand curve, or we move up or down our demand schedule. And then alternatively, if we see a change in income, price of related goods, tastes and preferences, number of buyers, and expectations, then we're going to see that entire demand curve shift up or down. So that concludes the lecture on demand. And again, this is just the first half of the market. And in the next lecture, we're going to cover the other side of the market, supply.